go. So this here, hey, how you doing, is a super beefy LG ultra-wide gaming monitor. And it has a name you will absolutely remember till the end of time, the UltraGear 45GR95QE. Yeah. But jokes aside, this thing is an absolute behemoth with a 45-inch diagonal and a 21:9 aspect. It has an 800R curve, so it's got a super sharp, immersive feel to it. It has OLED technology, and it has a 240 Hz refresh rate. Yeah, like I said, this thing is like the holy grail of larger form factor gaming monitors. And I believe as of December 2022, this officially became the world's first OLED 240 Hz gaming monitor. That's pretty cool, and I cannot wait to show you what else this thing has in store. My, oh my, would you take a look at that curve? And this is probably not the best way to unpack this monitor here, but I wanted to give you a perspective of how it is packaged. There's just a lot of empty space here because, well, there has to be because the curve on this thing is so sharp. By the way, if you watch some of our CES 2023 coverage, we actually highlighted this monitor in a video there, so be sure to check that out if you haven't already. You'll find these two pieces in the box, of course. The included stand and assembly is totally toolless, which I absolutely love. So this just threads in from above, and then you can clip the monitor into this top part, and again, totally toolless, no need for a Phillips screwdriver or anything like that. All we gotta do is tighten this screw down from underneath. And just like that, we are ready to go. That was super fast, and look at how beautiful this monitor is, holy cow. So you can raise and lower with this stand, you can pivot the monitor left and right, and you can swing it up and down. There's a lot of versatility here. I think that you're gonna be just fine with this, but you could also VESA mount this monitor if you so desire. Ooh la la. Love me some good plastic peel. Sorry, don't mind me. I look forward to this more than anything else. We get one more piece down here. It's just, oh, so yummy. And in case you're wondering, other things you'll find in the box include a USB 3.0 cable, an HDMI cable, and a DisplayPort cable. You'll get this fancy remote, more on this later, and an external AC adapter, so you will have to mind this. Ports at the rear include two HDMIs. These are 2.1 compatible, so you can use an ultra high-speed HDMI cable like the one you get in the box. You get a DisplayPort input, you get an optical input, you get a USB 3.0 input, and then two USB 3.0 outs along with your DC in. All right, and let's fire this baby up. I'm excited to see how good this looks. Again, the only time I saw this in person was at CES, and it was very busy, a lot of weird lighting. Oh my goodness, this looks so good. We're just looking at my wallpaper and I'm already impressed. OLED is just, it's just the best. It looks so nice. I mean, even just these icons down here look so vibrant. Very quickly, on this included remote, you can actually use it to do a lot of cool things. You can toggle between different picture profiles here. You can access the on-screen display via the settings icon. You can change between different inputs. You can change the brightness of the screen, the volume of the screen if you have a headset plugged in. And then, of course, you can navigate here with these arrow keys, which actually don't have arrow signs on them, but yes, you can click up, down, left, and right, and enter in the center. And of course, here is the on-screen display. We've got game mode. You can toggle between different picture profiles. I like Vivid. I think that this produces the best colors and doesn't really compromise much in the way of ghosting or anything like that. Different adjustments here. You get the variable refresh rate, a black stabilizer. You can throw a crosshair in, FPS counter, etc. You've got your picture adjust, brightness, contrast, sharpness, and the like. You can select between your inputs here. You got picture in picture, picture by picture, and then some general things here at the bottom. You can also see what you're currently running. So obviously 240 Hz VRR is on. We do have HDR off, although this panel does support HDR, and DAS mode is currently off. This is here to cut input lag, by the way, so you might want to have this on while gaming. Oh my goodness, yes. One of the best things about this monitor, in my opinion, the fact that its response time is like so stinking low, like 0.03 milliseconds. Most monitors are anywhere between maybe 1 millisecond and 5 milliseconds. 0.03 here. There's like no tails at all behind any of these UFOs. You can thank OLED for that. Now in our CES coverage of this panel, a lot of the comments reference 4K and how this monitor seemingly lacks it in favor of 1440p and a higher refresh rate. And LG tells us this is because of their target market with this panel. Sure, they could have bumped it to 4K. That also would have massively raised the cost of this panel, and they probably wouldn't have been able to stretch to 240 Hz. That being one of the biggest selling features, I think, of this panel, the fact that you can clock this thing so darn high for some of the smoothest in-game experience. That said, there are fancy equations out there to help you determine what the ideal viewing distance needs to be for a monitor with the sort of PPI so that you don't actually see individual pixels. This close, I clearly can, but if I'm about 2 or 3 feet away, let's say you've got this in a racing sim or maybe wall mounted, I don't think you're gonna have a problem at all. And me personally, I'll gladly trade off the higher resolution for a much higher refresh rate, especially in a gaming panel. You also need to ask yourself what you're willing to give up in-game for a 4K 120Hz experience over a 1440p 120 or 240. Just look at this chart here. This gives a pretty good idea of the sheer scale of 2160p over especially 1080p, but even 1440p. You can see the jump from 1080p to 1440p is a lot lower than the jump from 1440p to 4K. And this results in massive strain on the graphics card. So, in order to compensate for this, if you're willing to drop a lot of in-game settings to reach that 120 FPS target, I don't really see much of a point, because while you do, yes, have a higher resolution, the game looks a little crispier, the game also looks worse because now you're on low settings or maybe medium settings, whereas you could have been maybe on high or very high in 1440p. So it's all about managing expectations and weighing that hardware that you already have against different monitor choices out there. Let's kick the gaming into gear then, starting first with PUBG. And this title, I think, definitely benefits from an ultra-wide aspect. You can see more on your left and right. It really helps. Let's say I'm just gonna creep up here behind this hay bale. And yeah, you can just see so much more to your left and right. If I peer left, you can see around a corner, let's say. So definite benefits in third person for sure. And as large as this screen is, I gotta say, it really doesn't feel like a 45-inch panel. I love that it wraps around you. It does feel immersive, even in a title like this. I think racing games are gonna benefit the most from this sort of curve, but you don't feel too immersed. You don't feel like you're too close to this panel because, again, it's wider than it is tall. So there's not a lot of dead space up and down. All this goes without saying, the game looks absolutely incredible in 1440p thanks to this OLED technology. The colors are so vibrant, the contrast and dark scenes. You don't have those weird kind of just blotchy sections of dark that don't look good. Oh, there we go. That was pretty awful. But I'm playing against bots because I'm ashamed of my gameplay in a normal match. And another thing, the detail, say at the bottom right of the screen here, the mini-map, very, very clear. You can tell that the resolution is just not a hindrance. And again, I know you're going to be asking yourself over and over why this isn't 4K, but you really do not need it. Even for these older titles, you're going to be more focused on just the immersion factor of this 800R curve, the fact that it's OLED, and the fact that it is super smooth at up to 240 FPS. Another game where an ultra-wide aspect might come in handy is City Skylines. Here you can just see, everything we've been working on. It's a pretty early city, so there's not a lot of big buildings or anything, but it looks really nice in just a 16:9 aspect. Let's hop into the settings here and widen this to a 21:9, bump up the resolution to 3440 by 1440, and would you look at that? Just so much more to see. This feels so much better. Games like this, simulation style games, will definitely benefit from this wider aspect. And I've got to say, I know I sound like a broken record at this point, it's OLED, it looks really darn good. It's just a game like this, I mean, just the sheer beauty of it with the right mods can look so real on an OLED panel. And again, the curve really does come in handy, especially when games have these very long menu bars, say at the bottom. If I want to click on the bottom left, it doesn't feel very far away from me. In fact, it feels about as close as the center of the screen does, despite this being wide. Same with the demo button on the bottom right. It's just so easy to access. It doesn't feel far away or like you're reaching to do something on the corners of the screen. Oh, and I almost forgot, on the topic of gaming, the 45GR95QA also comes packed with Nvidia G-Sync and AMD FreeSync support, so it doesn't matter what graphics card you pair with this monitor, you'll be good to go. Call of Duty, by the way, feels okay on a monitor this wide. It is still a bit wonky in the corners, and that's just a result of this being a first-person shooter. I do think that it fares a bit better than, say, a traditional 48-inch TV or something along those lines. It does still feel more immersive, but especially when you're pivoting left and right very quickly, the corners here can start to be a bit distracting. A lot of professional players in games like these will tell you that smaller displays are actually better. I did want to cover this just in case you were wondering. But perhaps the best gaming application for a monitor like this is racing. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. The fact that this is not only immersive, ultra wide, but also super fluid means that racing games are going to look phenomenal. We're at over 250 FPS right now in Dirt 5. Obviously, we're only going to be able to see up to 240 of those. I don't have VSync enabled. But I mean, oh my gosh, I really wish that I could translate on camera, on video for you on YouTube, how good this looks in person. You just have to see what this looks like in person to truly understand what you're buying into with this display. LG has knocked it out of the park, and racing games are just the best way to embody everything that this monitor is about. Especially the sides of the screen here, when you can see the terrain just flying by so quickly. The fact that we're able to see 240 frames per second here means that even this stuff looks super fluid, super smooth. It's definitely a crazy experience, I've got to say. But just keep in mind, throughout everything you're seeing here, that you're going to need the necessary hardware to keep up with this resolution and especially this frame rate. You don't want any CPU bottlenecks. Make sure your graphics card is fairly high-end, or be willing again to make some pretty serious in-game compromises. In order to get 300 FPS in Dirt 5, I had to drop the in-game settings here to low in 3440 by 1440, and that's with an RTX 4080. So yeah, your mileage will vary. Just be flexible. That said, if you are able to max out a panel like this, it is going to be one of the best gaming experiences you've ever run into. You could have the best hardware in the world, but if your monitor doesn't look great, isn't fast, doesn't have great colors, it's not going to feel quite right. And this checks all of those boxes. There are also other very viable use cases for the 45GR95QE, by the way. In case you're wondering, LG has marketed this as a gaming panel, but there are just so many different uses. If you want to video edit with this, I mean, the ultra-wide form factor I think is great, especially when scrubbing the timeline, adding things in, trimming things down. There's just so much real estate to work with. This is very tempting. I'm tempted to switch to this with my from my main display, but I think I have an even better use case for this. Ah yes, now this is more like it. Now those of you who've been watching the channel a good while know that I actually had a wider screen than this, but it was shorter top to bottom, and I actually think I've grown to appreciate this size here. I think 21 by 9 is probably perfect. 32 by 9 is a bit much. Although it does give you the views of your side mirrors. Obviously you can get around that very easily in a game like this with a rear view add-on. But I really like this. I love that it's curved, it fits perfectly, it wraps around me. And oh man, I can't even imagine what it'd be like to have like 2 or 3 of these. And there I go. That was inevitable. And the other obvious thing as well, the fact that these colors look so good, it just makes this game feel that much more real. I'm pretty much maxed out in terms of the in-game settings here, and I have an RTX 3080 for this racing sim rig. Well, I cannot talk and drive at the same time, that is for sure. But I'm happy with this. Honestly, I think this is a better choice than what I previously had, despite that panel also being pretty premium. Yeah, there's something about this, the colors, the way it all looks. My lap is disqualified. Yeah, very, very happy with this panel. With that, if you want to learn more about the LG UltraGear 45GR95QE, I've gotten pretty good at saying that lately, be sure to check out relevant links in the video description. I want to thank LG again for supporting this channel and sponsoring this video, and hopefully you learned a thing or two about this panel and the tech behind it. Again, this panel checks so many boxes, and to be completely fair, I think the only noteworthy box it doesn't check is 4K, or at least the ultra-wide variant of 4K, and for reasons we already discussed, I think it makes sense to forego that to make this panel not only more attainable, more affordable, but also easier to fully max out. With a 3440 by 1440p resolution, you can then bump those in-game settings a bit more, or pull back a tad and then reach that possible 240 hertz cap that this panel offers. And I've got to say, I mean, so fluid, so curved, so immersive. You have to see it with your own eyes, folks. You really do, to truly appreciate something this cutting edge in the gaming space. So again, be sure to check out those links. Thanks very much for watching this one. Let me know what you think about the 45GR95QE in the comment section below. And if you've entertained OLED in the past, or maybe you're currently rocking an OLED panel of some sort, let us know what you're currently running. And if you would all consider upgrading to something like this. Is it too large still? Is this still too large to justify on, say, a conventional computer desk? Let us know. That feedback would be greatly appreciated. And by the way, stick around for what's coming up next on the channel. I think you will enjoy it. Subscribe, consider liking the video. I was supposed to say like and consider subscribing, but you get the point. And yeah, stay tuned for that next one. My name is Greg. Thanks for learning with me.